The other point that I often make when talking to groups about trauma is the fact that there's something at work with trauma that is difficult to understand, perhaps, if you haven't had the experience or you haven't had some close-in type of understanding that's been fostered through experience about trauma. Because there's something that I've referred to in the trainings that I do with Chickatelli on trauma. It refers to the work of Eckhart Tolle when he talks about the pain body. And the pain body is kind of like the byproduct of all the pain and suffering that people endure. And it takes on a life of its own. And with that pain body, when it becomes dominant and overshadows the individual's will and the individual's sense of right and wrong and the individual's sense of just humanity, it can make them do things that they would not ordinarily do. So what we're looking at when we are looking at that picture of violence against children and the trauma, sexual abuse, physical abuse, and neglect, what we're looking at is a picture of a maladaptive coping that has taken over a person's life because of whatever their earlier experiences might be. You hear about cases where women themselves have perpetrated the violence against their children, or where the women have allowed a paramour or someone who they are in relationship with sexually abuse or physically abuse a child. And those things are from that space within the human being where all of those good feelings that generally are generated through the transition through developmental stages. What did Erickson say about the first stage? You learn trust versus mistrust. So people are learning that. And one way that I've used to describe this whole experience is that there's a new normal. You get a new normal. The new normal was talked about up here by the ladies. That new normal says that those who love me hurt me. And that's the way I understand love. You know, to be cursed out or to be money thrown in your face or told this is the way it is, and that's considered love. That's the new normal. The other way that I describe it, and I went to a conference out in San Diego where we were talking to HIV providers out there, and the way I described it was life in abstraction. Can you imagine your image looking in a mirror? And then imagine your image looking in a mirror that's cracked. Your image is still there, but it's distorted, isn't it? Yeah. And that's what happens. And in the pain body, as I try to describe this, because it's unfathomable how these things can happen. But when you think of, and I refer to this over and over again because it's the only way I can try to convey this without any other imagery, is that it's like, how many of you have seen Harry Potter? And Voldemort was that evil entity that entered the body of this quiet, this passive and peaceful instructor, and no one knew it. But Voldemort, who was pure evil, as they personified, he was the personification of all things bad, right? He entered the being of that man and caused him to take actions that were really contraindicated according to the type of person he was. But because all of those negative emotions weren't reined in, weren't put in perspective, weren't balanced through any other perception of the world. If you think everybody in the world is going to hurt you, everyone in the world is evil, has an evil intention, or is in some way going to affect you in a negative way, you start to lose faith in the world, right? You lose faith in the fact that people can be good. So if they can't be good, then they need to be punished, right? And so sometimes it's through those distortions of life. So it's life in abstraction. It's the pain body taking over the will, taking over the perception. One of the things that happens with trauma is that it becomes a central focus in the life. If a child is in a household where there's violence, or if they're being abused on a regular basis, life revolves around that event, that situation. And it takes away your ability to look at anything else in life. It becomes the full picture of life, if you will, and those children can't learn very well or have difficulty in learning because they have to give all their time and attention to being hyper-vigilant about where is the next attack, when is the next thing going to happen that's going to put them in danger, how can they, protect themselves. So those are some of the things that come across. People who talk about trauma will talk about hypervigilance. They will talk about adaptive coping or maladaptive coping. Some children, as a result of sexual abuse, and this is not in all cases, but may develop an eating disorder, may develop any number of different issues. There may be, as adolescents, and we see it more in adolescents, but cutting. And there's all types of ways that people adapt to their environment, because we're very adaptable creatures, right? But there's this residue, there's this vestige of those experiences that carry over into life. And what we're finding is that so much of this is not treated. We'll treat the issue that says he ran away, so we need, this is a person in need of supervision. Or the parent can't control them, or they're in a gang, or they're violent in other ways, or they're predatory when it comes to other children, that they may sexually abuse or harm other children. And these things, those end products, those behaviors get addressed many times, but the origin, the roots of the problem sometimes don't get addressed. So do we have any pictures? We'll see that, and then we'll move into the talk.